Well, hello and welcome to this next session at the next Pharma Summit. The title of this session is Improving Patient Outcomes, Is Digital Solution? And I'll introduce our panel members in a couple of minutes. Now, we're all motivated to improve patient outcomes. It's why we're here. And after all, we're all patients. And whatever role we play in healthcare, we each want to play our part in improving the quality and length of people's lives. And over the last 100 years, we've seen some tremendous advances in medicine and healthcare. We live longer, and most of us enjoy better quality of life. Over the last 2 years, we've seen how we can respond with great agility to a previously unknown medical condition, COVID-19. And digital technology such as AI has the potential to have an even greater impact on healthcare. Eric Topol, in his fantastic book, The Patient Will See You Now, talks about how we're about to see a medical revolution with mobile devices. Our phones that we all carry around with us can help detect disease, help us manage our condition, and even administer therapy to us. But we also have to acknowledge that we have come to a critical point in the history of healthcare services. Our healthcare services are struggling to keep up with the demand. We have a growing population, and more of us have long-term conditions. In fact, each one of us has a 50% chance of developing cancer at some point in our lives, and cardiovascular disease is still the biggest killer on the planet. So we need new ways of delivering healthcare services and new ways of working. Eric Topol, again, points out that we have a tremendously untapped resource to improve healthcare, and that is the patient themselves. So today we're going to explore whether digital solutions can help us solve some of these pressures in healthcare. We're going to discuss how digital can help to empower people to manage their own health, and we're going to debate the role of the pharmaceutical industry in helping this all to happen. And to discuss this, we've got an excellent panel. So first of all, I'd like to introduce John Gordon. John has worked in the NHS as a pharmacist and is now Digital Innovation Lab Lead for International Markets at Pfizer. And amongst many great achievements, John tells me he also once took the ECG of the Australian Prime Minister. So John, you have to tell us what you found. Did you manage to find a heart there? And we also have with us Richard Condon. Richard is business unit head for general medicine at Bayer, and I think he also used to work at Pfizer. And in fact, today is a special day for Richard. It's your 24th anniversary of working in the pharmaceutical industry. So very happy Pharma anniversary day, Richard. I hope it's been a very happy marriage. So we were due to have Trudy, and hopefully Trudy will join shortly, and I'll introduce her when she joins. But let's kick off by talking to you, Richard. You've got a lot of experience in pharma in both Pfizer and Bayer now. Has the industry changed, or do you think it's basically operating the same model and using terms like patient centricity as just a marketing slogan?
Thanks, Tim. Thank you for the lovely introduction. Yeah, I think you just have to have listened to other speakers over the past day and a half at this conference to really know that the pace of change in pharma is exponential. And there's no doubt that COVID has certainly accelerated that change, probably decades in months. But to directly answer your question, if you go back 20 years of the model that we were all subscribing to, the strategy that we were implementing, we were really looking at a very feature benefit orientated strategies focused on physicians, which has then been evolving towards a more rounded view of trying to have a degree of patient centricity, using tools to really put the patient at the center of what we were doing, try to communicate and evolve our strategies to be more putting the patient at the center of more what we were doing. But this is the good thing about pharma. We continue to evolve and we continue to move forward. And I think what you're seeing now is a definitive move towards genuine patient-centric thinking, which is moving away from the previous Pills Plus offering, which everything that we were doing was really designed to support the brand, support the master brand, support more people either being screened to go onto your brand or to actually hold people through compliance and concordance on different medications. So now where we find ourselves, I think, is at a huge opportunity as the whole environment is changing and is more willing and more receptive to have vertically integrated solutions into genuine pharma strategies and product strategies that put the patients at the center of everything that we do, but is outcome driven. And that actually then moves beyond the product, moves beyond the drug, and looks for companion diagnostics, looks for services, looks for all manner of different opportunities that genuinely has the patient at the center of what it is. And then there's a continuum that follows the patient through their journey. And Pharma is thinking, more broadly through solutions and partnerships to work in a very, very different way from what we have before. So I think this is the real, true cutting edge of where we are for true patient centricity, from a thinking to actually applying that in real life for what we're seeing for strategies that are coming through, and probably the next generation of products that we will see coming to market over the next 2 to 3 years or so.
Well, fantastic. That's great to hear. And we'll talk about how you measure the impact, return on investment in a second. But it's great to see that Trudy's been able to join us. Hi, Trudy.
Hi, Tim.
I'd just like to quickly introduce you. So Trudy is founder and CEO of Arrhythmia Alliance, the AF Association, and STARS. And she's brought about many initiatives to improve the detection and management of cardiovascular disease, for which she was awarded an MBE in 2009. We've just heard from Richard about the evolution of the pharmaceutical industry to meet the challenges of our growing population and the increase in long-term conditions, and how we introduce new products and services. It'd be really great to hear from you, from your experience working with patients, particularly in cardiovascular disease, to understand how things have changed over the last, say, 10 years, and what do you think are the greatest unmet needs of patients at the moment?
Certainly things have changed, mainly for the better, and the biggest change has come about because of the pandemic. We really have accelerated probably 10 years in as much as digital technology and access. And I think all of us, whether we're patients or we're people without a diagnosis of anything, we've had to embrace technology. Look at us now on this meeting. 2 years ago, we wouldn't have dreamt of having a meeting like this. It would have been face to face. With that has brought higher expectations and more demands, quite rightly, from patients that they want more information. Just look at the questions being asked about the COVID-19 vaccine. What other vaccination have we ever had in our lifetime that we knew the manufacturer? And yet now everyone says, oh, which vaccine did you have? Was it this one, or this one? So patients want to know more. They want to understand more, and they want to engage more. And I think, I say, we are moving towards that. There is still a long way to go. One of the things that I think perhaps Pharma in the UK will have to do is look at their self-imposed compliance, because currently, if you go to the US, Pharma can advertise on TV. They can promote their products. Probably, that's too extreme. Whereas in the UK, that's not possible. And in fact, we host patient days, patient educational days, and whereas device companies will exhibit, and patients love when it was physical to see and touch a pacemaker, for example, and when it's virtual, they like the same thing. Because of the code of conduct in this country, Pharma are not allowed to do that. And I think mainly brought on because of the COVID vaccine, it is something that patients want to be able to ask manufacturers about their drugs, not about their personal health, but about the drugs in general. I say every day there's something about the COVID vaccine. And, if you think of anything else, if you're a car manufacturer, you liaise directly with the driver of the car. They ask about what they're purchasing, what they're driving. And I think that's something that Pharma could make a giant leap forward.
Mm. Thanks, really. Well, John, how do we respond to this challenge of allowing the punter, the patients, to be able to talk to the producer of their pills and potions? And what part can digital play in that?
Thanks, Tim. So at Pfizer, really what we do with every case is we look at the patient journey from start to finish, and we look and see where are the big gaps, where are the pain points, where potentially we're not leading to the best outcome for patients. And then once we find those gaps or those pain points and we're looking for solutions, we always ask ourselves 3 questions. So who is it for? What experience are we trying to create? And what outcome are we trying to achieve? We won't move forwards with any digital solution until we can answer those 3 questions, which are really important. And then, you know, if you want me to share some practical examples, if we look at perhaps at the awareness stage of the patient journey and rare disease, we know that some patients suffering from rare disease may take more than 4 years to get to a diagnosis. So, you know, there's opportunities to use algorithms applied to health data to see whether we can detect patients that are suffering from a rare disease that don't know about it at an earlier stage, and then get them connected to a healthcare professional that's specialist in that area that's able to then accelerate that diagnosis. We've talked a little bit about vaccines. Is there opportunities to improve the education around vaccination? And again, highlight to patients that are at most risk of various different conditions, and then connect them with healthcare professionals. That's at the awareness stage. At the diagnosis stage, there's opportunities to use digital technology to speed up the identification of patients that might be suffering from a condition. Seeing as we've got Trudy on the line, AF is an area that we've worked closely on. So we've partnered with companies that have patches to diagnose atrial fibrillation using ECG technology in the patch. We've also worked with companies that have PPG mobile applications to do screening for patients that might be suffering from AF that have no symptoms, that don't know about it, to ensure that they're prioritized towards a healthcare professional at the appropriate time. And if we move on to the treatment stage, it's not just about the medicines now, because we know that the medicines will probably get you halfway there in terms of a clinical outcome. For conditions like rheumatoid arthritis or inflammatory bowel disease, you know, there's lifestyle modification that needs to happen, or diet control, or improvement in exercise and mental well-being, that all lead to a better outcome for patients if we can intervene in some of those areas. And so we've worked with various different digital companies, some that create mobile app companions that can help with education and coaching for patients suffering from those conditions. And we've also worked with adherence devices that can help patients understand when to take their medicines and to remind them if they've forgotten. So, you know, a whole spectrum of different digital solutions across the patient journey that could really help add value to patients. And ultimately, it's about understanding what outcome we're trying to achieve at the end for the patient, and then whether there is a digital solution that can help us get there.
Great, thanks, John. And it's interesting to think about the involvement of patient advocacy groups like Trudy's in working with industry. So perhaps, Richard, it would be good to get your viewpoint on what do you think is the optimal way for the industry to work with patient advocacy groups, like the AF Association, for example.
Yeah, and you know, this is one that we have a lot of history. You know, we have a lot of history of working with patient associations across all sorts of disease categories. But I think what we need to be doing is actually getting involved earlier. You know, as John's already outlined, you know, this is, you know, that patient journey, that patient centricity that we've been thinking about. We need to have different viewpoints. We need to have different viewpoints that we will look from perspective as you're mapping out a patient journey. But this is where, you know, working with, you know, such organisations such as Trudy and AF Society can really make a difference in giving the patient angle, giving the patient voice, which will translate into the digital solutions and also the pharmaceutical solutions that sit alongside it to actually help us derive the outcome-driven projects and programs that you can have drugs sitting next to digital therapeutics, digital diagnostics, but only through a very strong patient voice can we really understand what it is we need to create and translate. And this is through the whole journey of creation, all the way through to that understanding of value from payors' perspective, where we also need patients to be very involved so that they can understand probably for some of the more qualitative factors that might be difficult, from hard endpoints to deliver, an economically justifiable price, but it can be equally impactful to a patient's journey or to a patient's outcome. So it's about getting involved very, very early, having very long-term relationships so that industry can really stand shoulder to shoulder with patient associations and patients alike to deliver solutions that are ultimately outcome-based, and it's better for everybody.
Great. We lost your vision for a bit, Richard, but you're back. That's good. We heard you loud and clear, though. Thanks. Yeah. So I guess it's good to throw that over the other side of the net to Trudy. And Trudy, what would you like to see as the relationship between patient associations, advocacy groups, and industry moving forwards?
They must be much stronger. Some are very good, some not so. We shouldn't just keep talking about a patient journey. They don't choose to go on this journey, and a lot of, so some of the language that's being used, I understand it and I know what you mean, but so many people say, why do they say I'm on a journey? I've not chosen, I'm not going on holiday. It's terminology, and we mustn't forget it is people with whatever condition. They don't want to be labeled patient. So there's how to engage with, and it's not a criticism as such, because I totally understand what you're saying, but that's why you need to be involved with organisations like ours at the very beginning. And we have to remember, John talked about awareness. Unless the person is aware, or they have debilitating symptoms that makes them go to the doctor, they may, especially with AF, for example, paroxysmal or AF, you have no symptoms. So they're not a patient, they're a person. We need to make sure that there are far greater awareness campaigns and prevention and detection. You don't become a patient until you're diagnosed. So a lot of what John and Richard have said, that's once you've been diagnosed. We need to take a step back. This is say prevention is better than cure. And I think that industry should treat patient organisations as equal partners. Just as you work with clinicians, healthcare professionals, you should be doing that with us, and not excluding us on occasions. Oh no, we can't include you because you're a patient, our compliance doesn't allow it, or you're a patient representative. You have to remember, some doctors are patients as well. They may have the condition, they may be taking your drug, and at the end of the day, the customer is the patient, is the person with. So I think pharma industry have come a long way, but I think there's still just a few hurdles to overcome, and we can help with that. And equally, if you help to educate us, we can disseminate that out to people living with these conditions. Things as just an example, for example. So when the new anticoagulant drugs came to market, DOACs, in all the promotion and the talk, it was about stroke prevention in AF, and it was SPAF, which was a horrible acronym. People with AF, or people with symptoms of AF, it's their heart. They're not aware that there's something that could trigger a stroke. So I introduced AF-related stroke therapies, anticoagulation therapy to prevent AF-related stroke. AF becomes before the stroke. Suddenly, doctors were saying our patients are adhering to their anticoagulation therapy because they're now understanding if they have this medication, it will help prevent a stroke. Whereas before that, patients were saying, I went to my doctor with palpitations, breathlessness, and all he talked about was having a stroke. It was my heart I went to. He didn't listen to me. That's misunderstanding. That's lack of awareness. That's lack of education. So we need to think of those things. Same as anticoagulation is a therapy. It's not a treatment. So a lot of people didn't adhere to their anticoagulation medication because it didn't make them feel any better. So I think it's education on both sides. Patient advocacy associations such as ours can help industry and healthcare professionals understand the public, the patient perspective, and you can help us understand so we can go back and help raise awareness and education with the public. And I think if we all collaborate, I always say it's the three pieces of the jigsaw. You know, we need industry, we need healthcare professionals, and we can help the patients. And at the end of the day, you know, without the patients, we don't need it, you know, industry and healthcare professionals, but we all need to be working together collaboratively and on an equal footing.
Yes, well, collaboration is a very key word here, and as you say, truly, patient education is so important as a foundation before you do anything else, and it's astounding what gaps there are in patients' understanding about health and treatment. So, you know, are we going to see more collaboration between pharma companies in providing this information and education for patients, do you think? John, what do you think about that? Traditionally, pharma tends to work, you know, one by one rather than collectively. What do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, so my job is all about looking for partnerships and collaboration. So obviously it's in my interests for longevity to say that partnerships are the way forwards. But I think fundamentally, if you look at, say, adherence, for example, most patients that are taking one drug are probably taking other drugs from other pharmaceutical companies as well. And the last thing that we want is a patient having to download 15 different apps for their whole drug regime. So I think there's definitely opportunity for working collaboratively, either with other pharma companies or perhaps with a third-party platform, to ensure that the educational content is placed in the most appropriate place for the patient to get that as frictionless as possible. You know, one of the biggest challenges with many digital solutions that we've seen over the last few years from pharma has been just the lack of engagement with it. Getting it into the hands of the patients has always been a real challenge for two reasons. One, because we haven't been terribly good at creating good solutions for patients, I think, because exactly what Trudy was saying, we haven't had the patient in the room co-creating the experience with us. But secondly, just perhaps sometimes when we create these solutions, we really need to think about how to, I say commercialize, but how to get it into the hands of those people that really need it. Sometimes we stop at the, you know, we've created it, we've launched it, rather than thinking through the whole life cycle of how to, you know, ensure that it's updated and how patients' feedback is incorporated to iterate and improve. So yeah, that's what I'd say.
Yeah, I think we've all been guilty of thinking, build it and they'll come. Maybe we should talk about return on investment, or whatever term you want to use for impact. You know, Richard, when we're, you know, thinking about digital initiatives supporting, say, a therapy coming to the market, how do you justify investment in digital tactics, and how do you measure the impact and ROI?
I think we just simply have to move away from our traditional thinking, you know, and where we are on digital, if it would be, you know, page impressions, clicks, whatever it's going to be, we have to really pivot and move towards outcome-based models, you know, of the way forward, that we should be measured exactly by, we say, what we're going to create and what we can, you know, add and what life improvements we can make as industries sitting along, patient associations with, you know, for people, as Judy said, for people who have these conditions. But ultimately, this is difficult. You know, how do we actually get to these quantifiable endpoints that we can put on the table that we can measure? And each solution will be subtly different. There is no simple ROI investment you can apply for AF, that you could apply for rheumatoid arthritis, that you could apply for Parkinson's. We really have to look at things, you know, in totality, but in individuality. So this is why we need to bring in, you know, some different views of health economics about how we measure it, to talk to payors to see what is it ultimately that will be, you know, funded, and what is going to make a difference ultimately to the people who are going to be using this, to bring them back into it so that they actually get the most out of it, whether it be the digital diagnostic or a digital therapeutic, leading to improved treatments. But you really have to think through strategically as business people, you know, how can we make this count and how can we make it give it longevity for all of those additional investments, as John said, for the updates that are needed through the lifetime, of that product that we are creating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. And John, I hope I'm not misquoting you here, but I think on a previous Next Summit talk, you talked about how technology companies are learning about healthcare or making more advances than healthcare companies learning about technology. Do you think healthcare companies are becoming more effective and efficient at adopting digital technology and changing the way they operate?
I think we're at the start of a journey, and that's why partnerships are really, really important. I think we use an equation which is innovation equals invention plus adoption. There's plenty of invention out there right now, lots of great solutions, but we can bring some real experience in how to drive adoption and how to measure outcome from some of those interventions. So dodging the question to some extent, but I think we are definitely moving in the right direction. Whether I think technology companies are learning healthcare fast enough or faster than we're learning technology, I would say, healthcare companies have been around a very long time. We do understand the people that suffer from our conditions, and we do also understand the healthcare professional behaviors necessary to drive change. And technology companies are really only scratching the surface, I think, at this stage. But we have a lot to give each other, which can benefit people overall.
Well, I think that's a fantastic note to finish on, because I think our time is up. We're still at the early stages of using digital technology to improve services, and it's great to hear how pharma companies are making great strides in this and working in partnership and working collaboratively. And we hear the call from Trudy to work closely with patient associations to really think about the patient's needs and provide education to ensure that products and services are utilised appropriately, which is, of course, in everybody's interest. So thank you very much. And thank you to everybody who's listened to this webinar. And we look forward to speaking again soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.